Too often, we find ourselves voting, but knowing little about the names or the issues that are on the ballot. But is this the way that it should be, or just the way that it's always been? Well, that's where we come in, community media. We reached out to the candidates of the May 24th election and asked them to spend a few minutes introducing themselves to the people of our communities. Here are the names, the faces, the voices, and the ideas of those who did. I am here with Bob Patterson, County Board of Education incumbent for District 5. Bob, how are you?
I'm good. Good.
Did I get all that right?
You did.
Okay, good. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself? On a personal note, who is Bob Patterson?
Well, I'm a pastor at the Baptist Church in Warm Springs. Been here since 1986.
Wow.
Moved here, loved it here. Was born in Blue Ridge in North Georgia in Fannin County.
Okay.
Grew up in Hall County, Gainesville, in the north part of the county. Went to public schools there. Went to North Georgia College, and then the Southwestern Seminary for a 3-year master's degree, and then later at Southern Seminary for a doctorate. And moved here, like I said, in December of 1986 on the south end of the county, as opposed to I've always lived up in the north end. And settled here and just had a great life. It's been a good place to be.
So what has it been like for you living in Meriwether County?
Well, in North Georgia, I studied political science and history. So Warm Springs, being the place where the 32nd President of the United States died in 1945. In fact, next month, April the 12th, would be the 77th anniversary of his death here.
Wow.
That really is something I've really gotten into. And I've read a lot about Roosevelt, studied a lot, talked to folks. When I first moved here, there were people living who remembered Franklin Roosevelt, who had met him.
Oh, wow.
And of course, they're almost all gone. There's 1 or 2 folks still left who knew Roosevelt. They were very young, but they actually saw the president, and some of them interacted with the president.
Wow.
And so one thing I've enjoyed about being in Warm Springs is being in a location that has such deep American history. And the opportunity to learn about that and to explore that and do a lot of research on that. One thing I'd like to do later on when I have time is to put some of that in writing about what Roosevelt and the interaction with Warm Springs. Some people would say that being in Warm Springs is what really changed him from the aristocrat playboy that he had contracted polio, came here in October of 24 for treatment. Swam in the warm waters, loved it. Against the objections of his mother and wife, he bought 1,200 acres and an old beat-up Victorian-style hotel. So this is where he first met common people. He'd never really been around. And certainly things like rural electrification, the FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation that insures our accounts, and things like that. Probably Warm Springs had a significant influence on those decisions of those bills that he introduced or had introduced and was adopted. So I've loved Warm Springs. And being here and being in a historic place has been something that's really been interesting to me that I've really enjoyed. Other than the people.
Yeah. That's a take on the history that I've never heard before.
Okay.
Never heard that perspective.
Well, sometime I'll give you a tour of the little White House.
I would love that. Love that. Yeah.
There's a couple of folks who are redeveloping the Eleanor Roosevelt School here in town. When Franklin Roosevelt moved here, he co-signed the bonds to build a new school. Of course, at that time, it was just for white children who had segregationists in the 20s.
Yeah.
So in 36, well, the story goes that his wife had been working him about, you've got to do something for the African-American children in the community, because I'm not sure where they were going to school, what kind of building it was, but I'm sure it was not a good one.
Yeah.
So a guy named Rosenwald had been building school buildings across the South, but had stopped. And Roosevelt called him and said, you've got to build one more in Warm Springs. He says, I'm not doing that anymore. And he says, well, my wife is on me about doing this. You got to do this for me. So he came and built the school that's up near Leverett Hill here in Warm Springs. And it has to be the only, maybe the only school of any kind, only elementary school of any kind, but certainly the only elementary school designed for African-American children that the President of the United States dedicated.
Wow.
And that was 36. And that building is being repurposed in a different way. I think it'll have some of the history there, but it's also have some work with on teaching children about agriculture.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So living here, you said you originally moved for the church.
To be the pastor of the church.
To be the pastor of the church. So what inspired you to get into public service?
Well, one of the things the church wanted me to do when I came here was to be involved in the community. And so I took that to heart. And through the years, I've served in a lot of different capacities in the county. We have an interagency council family connection group. I was a part of the predecessor to that, and I was the first chair of that group that sought to bring, it was a Zell Miller idea, to bring the people who work and serve our children from the various agencies, public health, DFACS, public education, community health, mental health, substance abuse, and bring those folks together with the faith community and citizens and parents and try to work on solving community problems at the county level. So now every county in Georgia has a Family Connection Collaborative. I was fortunate to serve on the first board for the state collaborative, and I was chair of the collaborative here for many years when it first started. And we tried, and what we did was be able to pull the people together at the table and solve some problems and cut through the red tape. Everybody deals in their own silos, and what we did was able to pull people together. At that time, we had local people who were leading those agencies, so it was easy to sit down and work out solutions to whatever problems the children and the families were encountering. I've been on the hospital board for a number of years, and I've really enjoyed that work, keeping our county hospital open and running with the attached nursing home. One of the things I do now that I really enjoy is working with the Toys for Tots program. For the last 5 or 6 years, I forget now, 5 or 6 years, I've been the coordinator for the effort where the Fayette County and Coweta County Marine Corps leagues give us toys that we distribute through churches and schools across the county. And I think last year we facilitated the giving away of about 2,500 toys. Oh, that's not right.
Quite a list.
That's
experiences.
I've been able to do that, and I've enjoyed that. And I've done a lot of other stuff, but those may be some of the more interesting things and things that are related to the children. I mentored some folks at Greenville High for a couple of years, several years ago. I enjoyed doing that. I did some things with the school board, served on the SPLOST special committees when those were adopted, when we were building buildings. So those are a few of the things I've done. I'm on the board of the Friends of the Little White House here in Warm Springs, which obviously tourism is a huge industry for our community. And it's a great industry for us because it doesn't require a whole lot of infrastructure. And those folks will come here and spend their money, and we collect sales tax off of that. The school board gets a special purpose local option sales tax revenue off of that. So all that has worked together to be a very positive thing for the county.
Absolutely.
From a tax revenue point of view. So I've enjoyed doing those things. But specifically to the school board, I was asked to serve an unexpired term, which I did. And that was a little less than 2 years, I think. And then, so I've had one full term. So I've been on the board about 6 years, 5.5, 6 years, something like that.
And what stood out to you about that experience on the school board?
Our children are really great children. They have a lot of potential and a lot of possibility.
Absolutely.
But they need a lot of support to be able to achieve their dreams or to find a dream. I've long felt, because going back to the family connection work, I've long felt that one of the great handicaps, if I can use that word, for our people growing up here is they don't have a vision of what they could do or where they could go, who they could be, because they've had just a narrow, not their fault, it's just they've not really seen the possibilities they have, or maybe they don't believe in themselves for various reasons. And they need to be able to have a dream about who they could be and where they could go. You know, that's kind of like that Dr. Seuss book, all the places you'll go. They really need that. So one of the things I'm really happy about in the school system is that we've been able to provide an enormous amount of social and emotional learning support for the kids. We approved a trip last meeting, I think, for the Greenville folks to go to a science museum in Birmingham, I think it was. It's hard to believe that we have some children who've never been outside of Meriwether County. But that's true. And so obviously, you know, their idea about what they could do and where they could go and what they could be is limited, not through any fault of their own.
There's a vacuum of exposure.
There's a vacuum of exposure, and so they need the opportunity to experience things, to see things, to dream that you could do what you want to do. And we have a lot of kids who've been very successful from our community, physicians, attorneys, CPAs, whatever top-line profession you might want to think of. We've had kids who've been able to do those and have been very successful in that. And I would love to see all our kids be able to dream their dreams and have the help they need to get on the right path to achieve that dream. And of course, they may change their mind as they go through that.
As do we all.
As we all have. So I think that's one thing I think about that I've discovered is that our kids are really great kids. And being on the school board, I've been able to see it a little more intimately. But we also have some good instructors. We have some good administrators. We've got a great superintendent. And the system is, I think, moving in a very positive direction in terms of the support for these kids to enable them to achieve. I've got an early literacy program now that's seeking to help children when they get to pre-K. When kids come to pre-K and don't know the colors and don't know the basic things that they need to know, then they're behind when they start. And they can't read or not much. So this early literacy program that the superintendent started is reaching these kids, providing books to the parents. When I was at Family Connection, we started the Imagination Library, I think is what it's called, where a child gets a book a month. And they get mailed to them, something Dolly Parton started, I think. I'm not sure that's the right name for it.
But if I'm not mistaken, my sister was a subscriber to that program.
Okay.
Yeah.
They need books, age-appropriate books to read. And so this early literacy program now, the Rotary Club, which I'm a part of, we have funded for 2 years, I think it's been 2 years, you know, obviously if you're one, you can't read very much, but you can still follow along, and it's a computer kind of thing they can watch that speaks the words, and they can follow along with it. And just sitting with the child in your lap and reading to them is positive, even if they can't read. But you know, just sitting and reading with them. If you can't read, you're at a significant handicap.
Absolutely.
So those are some of the things we've done to help the really good folks we have in the community be able to achieve, to give them the tools they need to be able to do what they want to do. So I was asked to serve. I'm a preacher, I'm long-winded. We got back around to it. I've just enjoyed being there. In the last several years, we've made some significant strides. Our financial status, we're in the best financial shape we've ever been in.
That kind of leads into my next question.
Okay.
What do you think are the kind of significant changes that you've seen over this past term?
The past term, certainly the financial stability we have, which is something we did not have when I came on the board, just what it was, it just wasn't there. So we made some hard choices, worked real hard, have a superintendent and a good CFO that are very engaged. So we've been able to stabilize financially. The special purpose local option sales tax has gone up since we started collecting money for the Amazon purchases, and we have so many Dollar Generals in the county now, and so that's helped us in making tough choices about what we needed to do. That's one thing we've been very successful at. But the other thing is we did close the schools 2 years ago this month. We voted to close them one day, just a couple days before the governor said you have to close them. Of course, at that time we didn't know. We didn't know what we didn't know. So we closed the schools. I had to leave them closed to the end of the school year, which nobody liked, but that's what we had to do. I'm really proud of the fact that since then the schools have been open. Kids need to be in school. And you know, there are some that can sit at home alone and learn, but I don't know that I would have been one of those kids that could have done that. They need a structured environment. certainly we've seen they need the social, emotional development, interaction with other people. So we've been able to keep the schools open last school year, and then this school year, obviously, we've been able to keep it open. There's been times we've had to close a grade or a wing in a building. And maybe even there was one time we had to close maybe an elementary school just for a few days or something. I don't remember the specific details. But by and large, the schools have been open, and the teachers have done yeoman's work teaching the kids, helping them to catch up, and working with them. We're really proud of how that we have provided the support they need in terms of medical supplies, hand sanitizers, temperature thermometers. We have filters on the buses that clean the air. You know, in the winter, in the spring and summer, you can let the windows down. You got that circulation. In the winter, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So we have these the filters on the buses now that keep. We're doing everything we can to make the children physically as safe as they can be, medically as safe as they can be. We also now have school resource officers at all the schools, which, you know, God help, I don't want us to ever have an active shooter situation.
Right.
But
to have someone in place.
Someone's in place, and we've got a great, Captain Royce does a great job with school resource officers, and he collaborates with other agencies. And the school resource officers are also there to get to know the students, to help them and let them get to know a police officer. So, you know, those have been things that have been great. We've recently, this school year, engaged 2 curriculum superstars, I would like to think of them. One who works with K through 5, and one that then works in middle high. And their job is to assist the teachers in their instruction, and so that we can get to the point of raising the scores. And a test score may not be the fairest way to judge anybody, but it's the system everybody uses. Right. So we have to pay attention to that. We just can't ignore that. So these curriculum folks have been very successful in other places in the elementary age and the middle high age. So we've got some really class people who are helping our teachers and administrators work with the students. Now, obviously, we've had some sort of learning loss because of COVID and being out and all that stuff. So this year is going to be like a new benchmark. You really probably you can't go back to 2018-19 test scores and then compare them moving forward when testing resumes again, because it's just not fair. It's not a level field. But once we do get to that, I think we'll begin to see some significant improvement in that, which again is a metric that a lot of people look up online and see. I think there are other ways, better ways to measure a student than just by a score they get. And it's a better way to probably a better way to measure the schools. We have some really great administrators in good facilities.
Well, are there other methods to measure? Are there other meters to use?
Well, that's a great question as to what it would be. The child's social emotional development.
Yeah.
How well do they get along? Or how long are they in detention all the time in the principal's office? I don't know if you ever made a visit to the principal's office, but that's
a couple of my
that's not something, it's not a good indicator sometimes.
Right.
So there's those ways that we can measure that. And I think a lot of students, I see it in the kids in our church, when it's time for that testing to go on, they're nervous. They're upset because they know that I got to perform. So I think there's got to be some better way to measure how the student does. I realize it can't be entirely the teacher's subjective evaluation, but there's got to be a better way to measure how that student is doing, and what that might mean for how they could do. But I'll leave that to the education people.
Yeah. So you've been here in the community for quite a while. So not necessarily a new face, but there are new faces to the community.
Sure.
Yeah. So what do you think it is that sets you apart as, well, you're incumbent, so not necessarily a candidate, but in this role?
Well, I think that the experience of knowing the community and knowing a fair number of people in the community, even though we're a small town, a small community, I don't know everybody. I know a lot of people, and I think a lot of people recognize me when you're white-haired with a beard, you're bald, you walk with a cane, more people know you than you know, probably.
Fair enough.
But I think I'm accessible and open to the people if they want to talk and ask a question. The superintendent is the one who operates the school system. The school board sets policy, and the superintendent implements it. So at a policy level, at a high level, if someone has a concern or an issue, then sure, I'll be glad to talk to them about that. And if they don't know who to talk to in the system, I'll be glad to direct them to do that. But I feel like I have some sense of our kids and where they are and what's going on and what we need to help them achieve and become who they could be. So I think that and you know, my daughter went to public schools from kindergarten through 12. She's the valedictorian at Manchester. Got to brag just a little.
Yeah.
And so I've been invested in public schools. I believe in public schools. Public education is one of the things that has helped America be a better place. And the kids we have living in the community deserve the best education they can get. And so I've always been deeply committed to public education, and I want to see the public education improve and grow.
Yeah.
So
I believe it.
okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sweet.
So, in closing, is there anything that you would like to leave the viewers of the video or the citizens of the county? Anything you'd like to say to the people?
Okay. I appreciate you watching this video. And I hope by looking at it and watching it, you've perhaps learned a little bit about me and perhaps have some sense of whether I deserve the trust from you to help lead our Board of Education. So I ask you to vote for me because I feel like I know the community. I feel like I know the needs we have, and I think I have a clear idea of where we need to go. The last several years, we've righted our financial ship. We're in a good position with that. We've made it through COVID. We kept the schools open when a lot of other schools were closed. We've tried to do our best to preserve in-person education. And we're working constantly to improve that. So I appreciate your support in the past and ask for your support in the future. So thank you.
Bob, it's been a pleasure.
It's been great. Thank you. Enjoyed visiting with you. Let me take you on the little White House tour.
Absolutely.
All
We'll
right.
be in touch about that.
We'll do that
Thank
for
you.
sure. Thank you.